Hey guys, and welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything. My name is Pete, and welcome back to another edition, a little segment on this channel that we like to call Legacy Reviews. If you've never been by the channel before, this is a segment where I review the first 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows in order, that being Duel Monsters GX and 5Ds naturally, and I give kind of my thoughts and predictions and theories. I can do that because I've never watched the shows. I have no idea what's going to happen. I started with VRAINS. I'm not like Dylan, and I have no idea what is about to happen on these shows. And it's a lot of fun and a little bit of a challenge doing all 3 at the same time. This week, we are doing episode 17 of the shows, and we're going to kick it off naturally as we do in order with Duel Monsters episode 17, Terror, Call of the Haunted. So I'll be right back to start that review. Alright guys, so episode 17 of Duel Monsters kicking it off here, and I actually expected this episode when we jumped into it to be kind of a one-part duel. You know, we get the beginning there with Jonochi having the nightmares of Seto Kaiba naturally, and I sense that this is going to be a theme throughout the show of Seto Kaiba not only being the rival and upsetting our characters and really being a thorn in their side and maybe pushing them to do greater things, but particularly Jonochi. I think that's where that kind of mini rivalry is going to start, because Yugi obviously is the main rivalry for Seto Kaiba. But it starts off with Jonochi having a horrible nightmare of basically Seto just calling him a loser dog, an outright loser, and that plays later on to the episode of where he falls for the oldest trick in the book in time, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But after he has kind of his nightmare, he wakes everyone up, his whole crew, to kind of get the dueling started on day 2. Day 2 finally is here of the tournament here on Duelist Kingdom on the island. It's kind of crazy to think that the first 16 episodes, give or take, have all been within one day. A lot of things has happened in one day, but that naturally is kind of how shows go, right? You squeeze a lot of narrative into 24 hours, and we're, as viewers, it's supposed to make sense. But they're kind of aimlessly wandering around, wondering how many duelists are left here, and they estimate about half of the 40 duelists that started day 1 are now left, so naturally you would imagine even better, stronger duelists are what is to come, and that's kind of what they are theorizing. And then we get this shot where we get kind of a little antagonist group here, a bunch of like 3 guys that kind of look like Team Rocket grunts almost, right? One's kind of wearing a lab coat like thing. It was, I don't think that's supposed to be a reference to Pokemon, but that's kind of what it reminded me of when I first seen them. And then kind of the shocker of the episode that I didn't expect, especially this early on, is they're working for the boss, and the boss is Bandit Keith. And I did not expect to see that character, actually, after we got the flashback scene last episode where Seto Kaiba was talking about the first time that he saw Pegasus, and that's where Pegasus humiliated Bandit Keith, who's the number one, supposedly is the number 1 player in all of America, at least top money prize kind of getter. And Pegasus brought out a child, I think his name was Tom or something, out of the audience, and was able to give him instructions, and he easily defeated Bandit Keith. So I did not expect that character to be, 1, on the island, and 2, to make an appearance so quickly the next episode after we hear about him. But this is where all the meme, as I said last week, kind of started, all the lore that happened on Dylan's channel, all about Bandit Keith, why he's doing the cosplay when he gets to 75k. This is exactly where it started, all the way back here in the early 2000s. I'm not sure how to gauge Bandit Keith. I mean, yeah, he seems like he's kind of a D-bag, but what is his actual skill? He has to be decently talented if he was the top prize getter in the entire United States. But at the same time, where's the power scaling here? I imagine Yugi and Pegasus way above him, right? We've seen what Pegasus already did to him, using a child as his proxy. But where does Seto fit in? I would imagine Seto would be higher than him. And now we're going to see Jonochi maybe eventually down the line kind of face off against him. But before that, we see Jonochi go against one of his grunts. So we see the main motivation in this episode here for Bandit Keith is just basically he was humiliated. He wants to get back at Pegasus, and I like that that's that little wrinkle that I imagine he is going to get to the castle. I highly doubt his grunts are going to get to the castle, but he's probably going to end up using their star chips and getting the 10 necessary to get inside, and then I imagine Pegasus wiping the floor of them. When they go to the battlegrounds in this episode where, Bandit Keith says, it was kind of a stroke of luck that he found this, you know, hidden stage in the cave in a graveyard. And it's that very Duelist Kingdom once again, where now the stage will be set for ghost-type monsters that will have, they're 100% effective there, and they get their battle points, their attack points kind of boosted up, and no other card type is boosted inside of here. My question is, just thinking maybe a little bit too into it, is like, they say that some of the stuff is fake in here. So did Pegasus purposely create props in here to freak people out on the off chance that they would enter this random cave? Or are they just trying to convince themselves so they really believe this stuff is fake? And there's some, you know, darker things that have happened on this island maybe before or after Pegasus has kind of taken it over and made it his home, built a castle here. So I thought that was just like, you know, an interesting nugget in terms of the world building of the setting. It doesn't really mean much, but it was kind of funny to wonder about. And when they jump Jinochi, he's going about his business. You know, he's probably doing a number 2 out there in the woods, and they jump him, punch him in the stomach, and one punch in the stomach knocks this supposed tough guy out in one shot, which was kind of weak on Jinochi's part. I mean, we've seen in flashbacks that he definitely can hold his own in a physical fight. For him to go down in one gut punch, I thought was kind of weak on his part, but it all feeds into an intimidation factor that we see where this ghost type, you know, grunt that is working with Bandit Keith is the one setting up and challenging him to a duel. Now, when that character first spoke, I thought to myself, I went, that name is, I mean, you know, that voice actor sounds oddly familiar. I knew exactly who it was. 2 sentences in, I went, this ghost character, that's Sho from GX. So sure enough, I looked it up, went online, did a couple quick Google search, and boom, 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 and yep, that is the voice actor of Sho from GX. So getting a very minor role, I imagine, is going to be in Duel Monsters, and then gets one of the main character's significant roles in the next show. So talk about an upgrade there for that voice actor. So it's always nice to see them get a little bit of work, but that voice is just, it's just so recognizable that I was like, immediately. And he even says Anarchy, which in GX's brother, in here it kind of supplements into boss. So I assume there's different, I guess that same word can serve different connotations in the Japanese language. I mean, you guys could probably educate me more on that down below. But the duel starts, they're basically, the team, the Bandit Keith team, is teasing him, and it did something different than I thought it would. I thought we were going to go the classic route of Bandit Keith is trying to give advice, the Peanut Gallery is trying to give advice to the ghost character here, to the ghost grunt, and that he was eventually, it was going to not go his way after a couple times, and he was going to go against the advice of Bandit Keith, and that was going to ultimately lead to his downfall. And I thought this was going to be a 1-episode duel, but he actually sticks with it until he gets that trump card, the main part here of the episode, after Jinochi gets, you know, kind of wrapped into, as I said earlier in this review, the oldest time trick in the book of goading of, whoa, you're a loser, whoa, you know, teasing someone and basically saying that they're not good, and saying, oh, what are you scared, what are you weak? And it baits Jinochi and his, at the moment, simple pride right in, and it ties right into the beginning of the episode of him having the dreams of being a loser from Seto, and that's how he gets goaded in. And when we get into the episode and into the duel, and the ghost character is you know, losing monsters left and right, it's all Bandit Keith's design to set up Call of the Haunted, which is the main character, the main card here of the episode of what it is titled after. And they wanted so many monsters. Bandit Keith was setting up so many monsters for his ghost grunt because they end up having a power where they get to come out of the graveyard as zombified ghost monsters, where they not only get the level up on the field, but they also become immortal, which I feel has to be some Duelist Kingdom BS, because there's no way that is going to be a thing later on in the anime and in the card game itself. Because when Jinochi is attacking them, he should have some kind of effect with his Flame Swordsman, and nothing at all happens. They somehow are able to survive and defeat Jinochi's monsters, and that's where we leave him at the end of the episode. So a lot of cheese going on, and this 2-episode duel, I imagine is going to be 2 episodes now, is all about building up Jinochi's self-confidence and proving him as a worthy duelist, in not for us, but to himself. He needs his confidence back after he got smacked by Seto last episode. But it's also to set up Bandit Keith. I think he's going to be a more revolving character as this arc goes on, which was a completely unexpected experience. The other fascinating angle is, the group finds him at the end, you know, Anzu and Bakura and Honda and Yugi. They find him, they get to the cave. We didn't see them actually meet up yet, but Jinochi seems proud as he said that he's excited that he's doing this all on his own without Yugi. Is Yugi once again going to just stand there and sit there on the sidelines and not offer any advice? Or is that going to kind of throw Jinochi's game off a little bit now that Yugi is going to be there, and maybe he'll try to retreat to what Yugi's advice is and then realize he doesn't actually need it. But yeah, guys, that's kind of my thoughts here on episode 17 of Duel Monsters. It's just the start of a two-part episode, some interesting cameos that I did not expect, and I'm excited to see where all of this goes. Let me know your thoughts on the episode down below. And Immortal Monsters, how would you feel about that if it was almost impossible to eliminate a monster on the field? I'm excited to see how Jinochi and the crew are going to get around that. But we're going to jump over to GX episode 17, so I'll be right back. Guys, if I've said it once, I feel like I've said it 1,000 times through our first 12 or so reviews together since I took over in episode 5 here on the channel. 12, 13 reviews or so. What is GX? I mean, what is happening in this show, at least early on here in season 1? I know I hear, and I said last week, I hear things get different as the show goes on. But yeah, let's get into episode 17 of GX called Draw, Draw, Draw. What a weird episode once again. Another one of these kind of one-off duels that just takes place here early on in GX. And it all starts off with Judai and Sho running to like the cafeteria area. And they're basically going to draw this magical kind of golden bread. Now, obviously, it is not magical. Supposedly, there is some kind of special chicken there. It's a gold chicken. Who knows if that's fantasy story or it's actually gold. The point is that this chicken lays this fantastic golden egg that ends up making this great egg bread. And so this bread, this famous bread for the school here, it's put out every day amongst all other a whole bunch of regular breads, which are probably very good as well. And could you be the student that draws that bread, that golden bread for the day? It happens apparently every day. And Judai, we know his skills. He's drawn the bread 20 times in a row up until recently. And recently, he was not able to draw it in the last 10 times now. And we see that 10th time here early in the episode because as the teacher comes in and reveals, the bread has actually been getting stolen at night, and they just tell the students about it now. And so Judai kind of early on here, we've seen it last episode, we've seen it a few times so far in the show. He's sort of a detective, right? Like he's always willing to solve the problems for the school. Oh, someone kidnapped someone? Oh, I'll solve it. Oh, you have bread missing? Ah, no problem. I got it, teach. Don't worry about it. Like Judai's always on the ball with this, and it's just a really weird structure here, though, as the writers of the show and as for the audience early on. It's a strange kind of, it was just a weird episode in general. We'll talk more about that as we get into it. But Asuka's there, and Asuka seems interested in what is going on, but she's interested in it for her own purposes. She's interested in it because she randomly, and I feel for me, this was kind of out of nowhere. She goes, oh, hey, maybe this bread that is missing, maybe this somehow, and the kid that is missing that might tie into this, that might have to do with all the missing people that are gone from a year ago, which one of them, of course, was Asuka's brother. And I thought that was a really weird way to introduce that storyline that we got. I think that was, what, episode 5, I want to say 6 or so, when she got kidnapped and put in the coffin. Like, I felt that was a really weird way to transition that storyline back into today's current episode that we're reviewing. Like, it just felt out of left field, and I wasn't really in love with that. But the episode itself, you know, I have to get used to what is going on. So, yeah, maybe I wasn't in love with the way how that Asuka storyline goes, but it's fitting for GX, right? So we go out to the woods as everything goes, and you know they have a stakeout. They find the thief. He's this hunking muscular man with long hair, and they chase him out into the woods, into the waterfall, the teacher included, Asuka, Sho, Hayato, Judai, and they finally corner him. And literally the first thing I thought before they even cornered him, I was like, this guy looks like Tarzan. And then they make the comment as he's swinging across vines off of trees. I mean, it was such a callback to obviously Tarzan of Disney. That is exactly what they were going for. And then I believe it is Hayato that ends up saying, like, is this guy Tarzan as well? They catch up to him, and his name, the teacher goes, is Mr. Tarzan. So, like, it's perfectly in line with it. Just the show just memes one pop culture thing after another over and over again. And when they catch up with him, we see that he apparently put himself in exile. He wasn't missing. Nothing had happened in that way, except that he used to draw that bread. That's how the connection was there, and he never could get the golden egg bread. It never happened for Mr. Tarzan. So he went out into the woods, into the wilderness. He thought the idea was to get in touch with nature. And when he got in touch with nature, he could hone his drawing skills, which ultimately, even though you're only picking out bread, there is a little bit of learning in it that you're trying to practice your drawing skills and how good you are. How the heart of the card is kind of with you when you're actually drawing the bread. It's a ridiculous concept, but I kind of see what they are going for here. And of course, Judai challenges him, and he's been getting a lot more bold lately, Judai, where he's challenging others to duels and not the other way around. And he challenges him because he regards his own drawing skills as pretty fantastical, pretty amazing, and they rightfully so, they are. And now he wants to try it against Mr. Tarzan. And so we get a flashback of Mr. Tarzan after he explains it wasn't just about the bread, it was about in all of these key moments in his life, in duels, in the practical side of dueling, not in the written side, which he excelled at. In the practical side of dueling, he was never nailing it, and he called out, you know, to the ocean, and that's how he got the idea to be in touch with nature about, hey, things don't change, the waves come in and out, it's about you have to feel it. He believed feeling the nature and the setting around him is what got him to draw. And the flashback is so ridiculous because he looks completely different. Like, yeah, there's some similar facial features there, but he has this terrible bowl cut going on. It looks completely horrible. He looks way better as a Tarzan knockoff with his grown out hair, and we'll talk more about that at the later end of the episode. But they get into the duel, and his dueling style, Mr. Tarzan, is exactly kind of what you would expect, right? It's all predicated on drawing. Everything, every movement he makes inside the deck, even Judai calls out, is about drawing because he's obsessed with the thrill of actually drawing his cards, of making those moves. So even if it doesn't make strategic sense sometimes, and we see that at the end of the duel of what ends up happening to him as he gets a little too into it and a little too cocky about the situation, he pressed a little bit too much, is that everything is about drawing. As we said, Judai is a fantastic drawer himself, so even when he's backed into a corner, even when they're trading life points, when Mr. Tarzan gives Judai 1,000 life points, which ultimately ends up saving his life later, and then it gets taken away, Judai goes back down to 100 life points, all of that goes on. It comes up to a critical moment in the duel where Mr. Tarzan had this effect, this I believe it was a spell card, where if he was able to predict the exact card that he was drawing or the card that Judai was drawing, usually it was about him drawing it, then he would deal 1,000 direct damage life points to his opponent, to Judai in this case, and he actually does it incorrectly at the end of the duel. And that is because, as I said earlier, he was pressing and Judai called him out for that. He forgot about kind of his love for just drawing for it, and that he got swept up in being so obsessed with kind of wanting to win the duel and prove that this last year of his life was not completely wasted, and that ended up costing him in the end. We see Judai pull out Flame Wingman, which I completely forgot how powerful this card is, because he deals only, you know, as Mr. Tarzan says, a mere 100, you know, life points in damage, like it's nothing. But I forgot that the effect with Flame Wingman is you can deal the attack points of the monster that was just destroyed directly as life points to your opponent, like attack the life points of your opponent directly. And I completely forgot kind of, I want to say it's OP, but it's definitely a very effective and useful monster that needs to be, I think Judai needs to keep using a little bit more apart from some of his other fusion monsters that he puts together. And then Judai wins the duel at the end of it, as always, as we kind of see. And what Judai does as well, that he's been known for here for the first 17 episodes that I've been watching so far, is that he's not someone that's just going to be basking in the glory of his victory. He goes right over to Mr. Tarzan, who's so upset. Clearly, you can understand. He's just had a year of his life, and the first duel he has, he ends up losing. Too bad he ended up going against probably one of the best duelists in the entire academy. And Judai is able to talk to him and say, hey, listen, we can draw this bread again. You know, it's funny saying, yeah, make this bread, draw this bread, right? That's kind of how I feel. But we could draw this bread again, and we can bring you back to the school, and you could just be, you could still use your skills. You're not going to be forgotten about, and you don't have to feel worthless about yourself. Now, will this character come back in more episodes here with the, you know, teacher slash cafeteria kind of shop woman? I don't know. I kind of think a little bit, just because they built up his character a little bit, but then at the same time, GX has done, as you guys know, a lot of one-off characters here early on, so I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't come back. And as they go over to the bread, him and Judai, of course, Asuka is the one that ends up drawing the golden bread, egg bread, just to remind you that she's a good duelist in her own right. She knows a little bit about drawing, a little bit of something or two there, but I just felt that her actual addition, besides that, of that storyline of the missing children, where Mr. Tarzan really wasn't even one of those missing children, because as far as we know, those missing kids that include her brother, they kind of went off unwillingly, and as revealed in this episode, Mr. Tarzan, he did it to himself to get better at his own drawing skills. So a weird introduction of that storyline that ends up serving not a lot of purpose and doesn't have any clear cut solution for what Asuka was trying to do her own detective work out, guys. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts here on episode 17, Draw of GX. Another weird one. I mean, it's just what I've come to expect with GX. But let me know if I missed anything down below, or anything else you want to talk about in this episode, all about drawing egg bread. Remember, all about drawing egg bread. That's what this episode was about. Those are words I never thought I would say. We're going to jump over to the final part of the review for 5Ds, so I'll be right back. All right, guys, and we're back to record the final part of our trilogy this week of episode 17. This is episode 17 of 5Ds, Flame, Revenger, Speed King, Skull, Flame. Really enjoyed this episode. I think 5Ds has been on a really good pace, where it was kind of, you know, I've always liked this show, but it was figuring itself out, establishing the world, establishing its characters. But since, I think, what is it, episode 14, 15-ish with the Fortune Cup, we've really hit a nice stride here of introducing new characters, getting to learn about some characters that we knew a little bit about, in the sense of, like, Aki, let's say, like, we knew the shadowy figure she was as the witch. Now we really see her as the character she was last episode. This was in the third kind of duel here of the tournament so far. We get into Yusei, and I like when shows do this. I like when right off the bat, you don't have the main protagonist having the first duel right out of the gate. I like when you establish other side characters or other main characters up, and then later on down the line, you put in the protagonist. I just like the way that order is set up, and I think it creates more ingenuity in the storyline that you can do, and a little more maneuverability in stuff that you can do, because if you have the protagonist start off right away, you know they're going to win. They're not going to lose the first duel of the tournament. There's no way that's going to happen. So having another character in it later, even a character that you could build up, like an Aki, I think that serves the story better. But starting off the episode, we got a conversation between Himuro and Yusei, where basically Himuro is kind of giving Yusei the rundown and the audience the rundown that, hey, your opponent's going to be this supposedly reincarnated Grim Reaper character. Everyone that he's ever fought, they've never dueled again out of fear. And hey, are you going to use that card? You mean, you know, that card which we know is Stardust Dragon? And Yusei has that inner monologue moment where he says, no, he's going to wait to settle things with Jack is when he's going to use that card. So that shows, not surprisingly, the character of Yusei, that he doesn't need to pull his trump kind of ace card to beat anyone, even a supposedly great duelist in this reincarnated Grim Reaper guy that we later learn his name is Shira, that he's going to rely on the rest of his cards, which is another great advantage that you could have in your storytelling, of not having a character just rely on their ace card. That's a problem we have in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s right now, where kind of Yuga always relies on 7's Road Magician. not a great thing to always have your character rely on its main ace, so I like that there. And then we cut to a scene where you have the Grim Reaper, She-Ra, talking to, the director, Godwin's assistant. I hate that character. He's the worst. And we have a familiar character that at first I was like, I remember this character, but I don't remember their name. It ends up being Enjo. He's the one, I think it was like episode, I want to say 8-ish, that he dueled Jack and ended up losing. And Jack said, oh, I wasn't really trying my hardest or so. But the guy, he seemed like, he was a entertainment style duelist. He's definitely has a little bit of an ego, the guy in Maruko, I think Enjo, I think his name is, but he seems overall as a decent guy. And now to see him reappear, I like when the world can establish these minor characters that can be a little bit reoccurring. It can come back. He breaks in, I guess steals some security uniforms or beats the crap out of a guard, and then he ends up taking the Grim Reaper out. So they hype up this guy in the beginning of the episode, this guy She-Ra, and then it looks like Enjo just maybe ran him over with a bike, maybe tied him down. I mean, he messed him up and took on his outfit so he can get into the tournament against Yusei. And then once, the duel starts, we know exactly what Godwin, what that crazy doctor, what Godwin's assistant, we know exactly what they want. They're trying to power the momentum machine to, help out with the signers or whatever the ultimate plan is that we've gotten bits and pieces of information as we go on. However, that kind of goes by the wayside when Enjo was impersonating and disguised as She-Ra, which was going to be their puppet. That Grim Reaper character, he was supposed to abuse Yusei a lot because the more pain and the more danger he's in, that's where his power is really going to come out, and that's what they ultimately need to get that energy to power the machine. They want to see him bring out Stardust. That is the main goal, to bring out one of those 5 dragons, it looks like. We know Jack has one. We know Yusei has one. I'm going to imagine Aki has one, but I don't know that at this current time. We know these main characters are going to have that, and that's what somehow is going to bring out the signers. We have to see more of the story as that goes forward. But Jack was shocked particularly, and he had a very small role in this episode, but his reactions and the couple lines he said really served, I think, a big purpose. One of them was, when he's shocked that Enjoy's back, obviously he knows who this character is, but even at the end, and we'll get to that a little bit, of Jack's reaction, I think that's going to serve more to a serious potential confrontation that could end up being maybe life-threatening to Jack going down the line. But we'll talk about that more when we get there. So we get into the duel. I thought the duel was really solid. I didn't think about it, I guess, before I got into the episode, that we're the third duel here in the Fortune Cup in this tournament, and this is the first D-wheel speed duel that we've actually gotten, which really revs up the crowd and gets them excited, because I then thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right, with Bomer and with that Night Guy and Aki and all that, and Luca, all that stuff that was happening. I never really thought about it that, yeah, they were just kind of having a regular master duel. It wasn't a speed duel, so it was nice to see the D-wheels come out again on the bike. Maruko enjoys, has the crazy hot rod going. He's wearing the cool leather jacket and everything, and he loves speed. He's got a need for speed, you could kind of say, and he believes in his training that he did after losing to Jack recently, that the more speed you have, the greater chance you're going to be to win, and he wants to ultimately be the king of duelists, but to do that, he needs to get back to face Jack. That's the person who, in his mind, humiliated him, defeated him, and he's going to have to go through Yusei. But Yusei and him, I think, kind of have a little bit of a mutual respect in this episode, because one thing that Yusei was, he's always kind of, I don't want to say boring, but he's definitely more serious-faced, and there's a lot on the line here, right? His family, his friends have been threatened by the director and the public maintenance department. So he has no reason to smile or be excited about anything going on. He's got to be out for blood. He kind of has to have a mentality for that, to defend his friends and save their lives and save his own life. But as soon as it's revealed that it's not She-Ra, that it's not this Grim Reaper character, he actually smiles, and we see in the audience, and Himuro and Grandpa and everybody is talking about that. And I think he does that clearly because he knows that this guy, that Enjo, he's not a part of Godwin's crew. He's not a part of anything the director, is cooking up over there. He knows that this guy just wants to be the king of duels. It's a very maybe selfish intent, you could call it, but he wants that. And so there's no other ulterior motives. There's no bad intentions. Enjoy's not coming for Yusei's family. He's not being puppeted suspended on a string by Godwin, and I think that allows Yusei to relax and kind of enjoy this more competitive nature of the duel, which was it was a really, you know, I guess it's not a lot just to see Yusei smile, just give a little bit of a smirk, but for him, that's a lot of emotion that he's displaying that we've seen through the first 17 episodes here. I like also the little details where you have like the classic announcer of one of these tournaments. He's nervous. Clearly, he works for the, you know, the public maintenance health department there. He works for Godwin. He's terrified when it's not Shira and it's actually Enjoy, because he doesn't know how Godwin's going to react, and Godwin just says, hey, this is going to be entertaining, and boom, he goes right back into his kind of mentality of like, oh, this is going to be exciting, folks, and gets that announcer kind of vibe going up. But for a second, that facade was dropped a little bit, which just more shows what a terrifying character Godwin is becoming to all the people around him and to the audience here. We learn more and more each episode of really what this guy can do, or the fear that he kind of manifests onto other characters in the show. It's definitely bone-chilling and very unnerving. So as we have the duel go on, as I previously said, you know, Enjoy is all about the speed, and he gets the maximum. It's the first time, I think, in the show that we've seen 12 speed counters. It's the maximum that we have seen, and Yusei was hovering around there. He was really about 5 behind the whole time. I think the highest one was 12-7. Then he has a card that he kind of shift gears, he downshifts, loses all his speed counters, and the crowd and Luca and Lua and Grandpa, everybody's wondering, what is he doing here? I think Himuro kind of had a little bit of an idea of where he was going with that. You always know, especially when it's a protagonist or any character, if you're intentionally handicapping yourself and you're lowering your speed counter in this case, you know there has to be a reason. There's an ulterior motive of what's coming. What's going to be the trump card, you say? What is he going to pull out? Well, he does a little bit of a, you know, kind of a destiny draw, and he gets a card at the end. It was something called like Gap Storm, and so it has to be like the speed counter difference has to be 10 or more. I mean, like, the absurdity in that way, that of course it just perfectly works out that he would draw this card, that he would be in a situation where he can create a gap of 10 or more speed counters. That's how it works out for Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists, right? We're just kind of used to that. But Yusei was challenged in this duel. He was pushed to 100 life points. He definitely had to pull out a lot of stops. He pulls out Junk Warrior. He had Speed Warrior, and then his ultimate kind of finishing move there is he pulled out Nitro Warrior, powers it up to 3,800 attack, and is able to wipe out all the speed counter. And also we saw those like burning skulls that he was doing, those flaming skulls that Enjoy used against Jack. We saw that again, but in a different technique, and I appreciate when a show does that, is that he talks about training Enjoy, but then a lot of times shows say, hey, he trained, and then he goes back and does the exact same thing. It might have revolved around speed, his idea of trying to win, but he did have a little bit of a different technique and things that he could pull out, and different cards and trap cards and spell cards that Enjoy can pull out. So I really like when a show feels a little realistic like that. And then you get the final second to last shot there at the end. Yusei talking to Enjoy. You see that the momentum machine didn't gain anything, and Enjoy is excited. He's excited that, hey, he's upset that he lost, but he's also like, hey, I'm gonna get you next time. And Yusei gives another little smirk again and appreciates that, because it was healthy competition. They might not be best friends. I don't think they're ever going to be, but it's a case where, hey, I know that there's no other ulterior motives other than we're just dueling and trying to become the best. And that's nice for someone like Yusei, who's used to life or death situations, it seems, kind of every week. When we cut back to the final shot of the director and his assistant, that I never remember his name because I don't care to, because I hate the character, and Jack, and the assistant's laughing maniacally, Jack says, what have you been planning this entire time? So clearly, the little bit that we had a few episodes ago of Jack kind of being let into what's going on and let into Iliaster and the signers and what all that means, he wasn't showed everything, which is not surprising whatsoever, and he's getting frustrated with Godwin. So now to kick back to the earlier section of this review for 5Ds, this is where I fear for Jack, because I think it's going to ultimately come down to his life and his dueling reputation is going to be at risk if he does not do what Godwin says, if he goes against him. And I think the more and more this frustration keeps bubbling on Jack's part, because, hey, he has an ego, he reviews him, he reveres himself, I should say, as the king. Rightfully so. He's earned that in many ways, even though he's wondered before, is that false, because he technically lost to Yusei and stuff like that in like episode 4 or 5. But he still is the king. He still is a fantastic duelist. the more and more he's not let in on Godwin's plan, I think you're leading to a serious confrontation here going forward. And the assistant says, hey, you know, basically, is it time to Godwin? Are we going to be pulling out that? And then you have this very eerie shot where it shoots out of like a silhouette of Godwin staring down, looking gigantic over Yusei. So is that the matchup of Jack versus Yusei? Is that something else? What bag of tricks is Godwin preparing to pull out? I cannot wait to see. But guys, that's kind of my thoughts here on episode 17 of 5Ds, and that ends this week's Trilogy Legacy review here. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you've made it up to this point, I greatly appreciate it. These hopefully come back every Thursday here on the channel on Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, but there's a whole bunch of other content going on this channel, including 7's Up that we do about 8:30 Eastern, the current Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 show, the podcast that we do every Wednesday night at about 8:30 or so. Dylan has tons of other videos coming out, streams, unboxings, specialized videos, reviews, everything else just beside this. So please check him out as always, because I'm sure you do. Otherwise, why would you be here, and why would you be listening to this random Legacy review? Guys, thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I will talk to you down in the comments below. And until next week, thanks for watching.